Thank you for joining the webinar series today. So I appreciate everyone being here. I'm going to go ahead and get started. If you guys do have any questions, feel free to add them into the chat or the Q&A section anytime, and we'll be getting to those at the end of the session. So today's the third session in our three-part series of simplifying water quality instrumentation with Aquametrics solutions. And today we're focused around controllers. We want to start off kind of like we've done in the past with really the main value of our products, that our controllers, like our sensors, continue to work year after year. And we have some that, 10 years and counting that have been operational out in the field. And it really comes down to that our controllers work when you need them to. And in most facilities, especially in industrial applications, these are mission critical pieces of equipment that really make sure that whatever product that customer of yours or you as the end user of these products is creating is made exactly as it's intended to be made. And that's where controllers become so impactful. So let's start with some of the basics here. So we talk about controllers, but what else is there in there? And sometimes this gets a little bit complicated from an industry standpoint when people use different terms. So you guys may not be familiar with some of these terms that we're using, but these are some of the terms that we typically use here at Water Analytics. First one's going to be an indicator, right? Something that simply just shows what that value is. It's not going to go anywhere else. It's going to get the reading from a sensor. And then you're going to get your transmitter, right? What that's doing, and again, you think about that value that's coming off the sensor as A, it's just transmitting that value through. Now, it could be a blind transmitter with no display, or it could be a transmitter with a display, as you see here in the picture. Then we move into your analyzer, which is actually taking some sort of reading from the sensor or the probe, and it's converting it into something else. Now, that could be, taking the raw reading, and we'll refer to these kind of sometimes in the past, like our raw sensors, our dumb sensors, and then maybe like a pH, it's outputting a millivolt value, and the analyzer is converting that to something that everyone understands, which is a pH value. It could also be doing a little bit more interpretation with it, right? So maybe it's doing temperature compensation, and it's taking two parameters, right, millivolts and temperature, and giving you a nice stable output of temperature compensated pH. Then you move into your controller. Now that's going to take your A value and it can translate it into B, but it can also do action C. And that's what we'll talk a little bit more around in the presentation today, is that's where you start to use like your relays or actions and alarms and alerts to drive a process in a facility. Now, these can all look and feel a little bit different at each of your different facilities, and we want to really kind of go with the fundamentals and the basics here, so you have kind of the same language we're going to use throughout this presentation. How do you choose, right? There's a lot of options available for you. It really comes down to what does your facility need. Now, if that's your facility or your customer's facility, it's all the same type of questions, right? What do they need? And without going through the list here, right, it's really going to be a question around what is it that they're intending from their operation and their team, right? You need to sometimes talk to a few of the different people across that facility, right? The operators who are going to be using the equipment on a day-to-day basis, the managers who are going to want some level of control or understanding across, their job experience, and that helps kind of walk through what do you really need at that facility. Is really the most important question in defining what type of controller or analyzer you need at that facility. First one, and I like this term of walk the line, right? Where this really comes into play is can you see the parameter, right? A nice little example here, if you have a pH reading right next to your aquaculture tank here in this picture, that person wants to be able to just walk by and say 7.21, that's good. I'm very happy with it. Now, there could be other layers of visibility, right? Do you want a nice indicator with a light, your nice simple traffic light of your red, yellow, green to know if things are good, or do you actually want to be able to see the value? this becomes really important, going back to the different options. Do you need to see what that value is, or do you need to see some level of indication that you're operating within norms? The next one that we would look at here is your simplicity in calibration. So this one's really, really important because almost every single sensor needs calibration at some point during its life cycle. Sure, you could buy a sensor and throw it out and buy a brand new one that's calibrated out of the box, but for most facilities, that's totally impractical. You have to perform calibration to get proper readings. Then becomes the question of how easy is it to perform that calibration? I know I've been to some facilities where someone has to write something down, bring it to a computer, transcribe that into different numbers, and then punch those numbers into a PLC to perform that calibration. You lose a lot of time and you open yourself for a lot of error in instances like that. Also, I've had some instances where people use walkie-talkies to say, all right, I put in this, I got this reading, punch it into that one. Simplicity is really going to help drive the value in most facilities to reduce downtime, but also to reduce operational loss and wasted time in operations. And so having a nice simple controller, as you can see here with like our 2250 series, and just 6 screens, you can go from setting it up to calibrating it all the way through on a pH sensor. And it can really just walk you through what those buffer solutions that you use are. That's simple, and that makes a big difference for most operators. So control. Well, how does control work? Well, it really comes down to our relays and output signals. Those are really the two fundamental ways when we start talking about control. And that is, again, the big difference between what we would refer to as an analyzer or a transmitter and a controller, right? It by definition, needs to have control. So then looking at this, so relays, really simple, right? It's a switch, on or off, open or closed is really the terms that we're using in the industry, but you can think of it an on-off switch. And then you have your output signals as well, where you can send the data to somewhere else, or you can transcribe that into something else more meaningful, whether that's an alarm or whether that's actually a value, either 420, Modbus, or other different communication styles. So what does that translate to, right? So control is all well and good, but it has to have an impact to that facility. And that comes into, can I control a valve, an alarm, heaters, pumps? There's a lot of things you can control. So let's say, for example, you want to make sure your pH always stays within a proper value, right? And you need to add chemicals to raise the pH, or you add fresh water to reduce the pH. Well, now you can have 2 layers of control in that facility, right? If the pH drops below, you can have one relay turn on, and you have a dosing pump start to feed in to raise your pH value. Or on the other side of it, your pH is too high, right? And you need the fresh water to be added in. You can then have your relay be triggered to close, and you can open up a valve, or you could have, again, your output signal go into a dosing pump or some other parameter to actually give a scaling, not just an on-off option. There's a lot of ability you can do there, and it can help simplify that process, right? Again, in that scenario where you need to control your pH, just having someone walk by to make sure the pH is in the right range, and then they have to go manually change the valve, opens a lot of opportunity for error. And if you think about some of these facilities, downtime and loss of product can be really impactful in terms of the dollar figure to that facility for a mistake. Remote capabilities is a great function and feature that some controllers now have. And some of our controllers, as you can see here with our 2400 and our 2300, have these great digital capabilities from a web interface. And where this really comes into play is, again, when we talk about visibility, walking the line, being there at the point of use, that's great for a lot of operators and a lot of people in that facility. But there's some people in that facility that are either in the control room or in meetings or in a different part of the building maybe, or maybe even across the street. You can gain access and visibility to what is critical at that facility. And you can also be more connected, right? In this day and age, we're so connected on a regular basis, right? I can get alerts on my phone about something that's happening in my house And I'm used to that. And more and more people are getting used to it. And this becomes a more and more impactful function and feature that a lot of people are starting to adopt in the water industry. But I can always talk about it as how impactful some of this stuff is, but let's talk about it from a real world application. So this is a great case study that we had with data logging application at a health facility. And long story short with this, they were able to save thousands of dollars by mostly automating their reporting system. So before they were using a series of manual tasks to capture the flow and the pH, and they're paying outside consultants to pull all that reporting together, right? They didn't have that capability in-house. They were spending a lot of money to get this information that was required by them from a regulatory standpoint, and quite frankly, from a safety standpoint for that facility as well. And therefore, it was so important for them to do, but they were losing money with doing that. By adding a nice control that actually captured all that information, with just a couple of clicks every month, they had their reports ready to go. And they could look through all the information. And they knew, because they had set up the alerts and the alarms, use the other functionalities of the controller, that everything was good. And then the report really just became simply that, just a report to what they were trying to do. But it became really impactful to them because they're able to save thousands of dollars annually from that. Advanced controls. I'm not going to go into all the details here. There's a lot that you can do with controllers nowadays. So you can set up delays, and you can have cycling. You can make sure that your system is working properly. And again, you can really work through all the different parameters and access and capabilities you'll need at your facility. And the reason I wanted to kind of flag this from a slide perspective is because with a lot of controllers, you have a problem you want to solve, right? You know exactly what you want to solve. But it's nice when you have some of these other features in there, because you can start to solve the problem that you didn't know you needed to solve. And a lot of that's going to come right from data and AI analytics, but it's also making sure that your system is continuing to operate in the best way possible, but from a simple standpoint. The other great feature we see with that controllers and analyzers can bring to the equation is what we refer to as virtual sensors. So that being said, it could be totalizers. So like, what is the total flow during the day? Differential reading, right? What was the difference in the conductivity before a filter and the conductivity after a filter, right? That value, what is the difference, can be a really important one. And the controller can do all that math for you, so you don't have to go and read one number, subtract another. I know many people can do that in their head, but it's so much better when a controller can just show that to you. But also on top of that, you can add all the alarms and the controls off of that value. So if it's really important to know that the difference from one side to the other of the filter remains within a threshold, you can set an alarm or an alert with that. And that adds that extra layer of value to the customer, but in a very simple way. What does that look like then from an ROI standpoint, right? We're talking about more advanced equipment that may already be at the facility, or enhancing the capabilities at that facility. So ROI has to be part of that conversation. And in most instances, the payback is great for these types of controllers and solutions. Let's use an example here at a aquaculture facility. So PLC and web interfaces were just really too costly. They require a lot of customization. There was a lot of work and changes that would need to be done, and they weren't able to monitor anything outside of the building. By simply taking one of our controllers, the 2300, which to them was an off-the-shelf option, right? It was a plug and play, ready to go. They just had to set up their sensors the way they want, and we walked through that process, and they're able to just really improve on a lot of the functions and features that they wanted in that facility. And like I said before, there were things that they knew that they wanted and they were trying to get, and this 2300 solved it for them. But there are other features that really helped beyond that, right? So like data logging helped them with their compliance, and their operating became more efficient than it ever had been before. The theme of this presentation and our series for this quarter, right, has been simplicity. And simplicity also can lead to ROI. As you can see here, and you don't have to read this whole quote, but really the big takeaway was it was easy to implement. It was a great cost for them at that point, right? It was off the shelf instead of a custom solution, and they haven't had a failure since they've implemented. And that's the type of feedback we love to hear from the field, because by providing the simplicity to our partners and to their customers, it really helps drive success in the industry. So it's reliable, easy to use, and simple. Those are the features we really love when it comes to a controller. So we'll talk a little bit at high level, and I dug a little bit into our products, but I want to spend a little bit more time here of what our products do. So you look at the architecture here of the 2300, and this isn't a slide that's meant to kind of scare anyone, because again, as I said before, a 2300 can really be used in a simple way of, if you look on the left, it can just take the inputs from either analog or a pulse sensor and just simply display it and serve as an analyzer. But a lot of times you want to do more, right? Maybe you want web connection, email, you want to do some more control or outputs and data logging, and you can do any and all of that. But the beauty of something like our 2300 and our 2400 is these are features you don't have to use. They're built into it. They're there for you. They're at the same price point that you're going to be buying the unit for. But if you can just simply want it as an analyzer, you can use it perfectly for that application. Really comes down to what is the level of control that you need for your facility. This nice little view we have here that really starts to walk through the differences of our portfolio, right? So all the way on the left being more just our transmitter to our single controller being the 2250 then, and then our dual controller, and then our more feature-rich products being our 2300 and our brand new 2400. And again, where this really comes down to is what do you need for your facility? So I won't go in through all these details. This is something that is available, to all of our partners and to our customers to see, because what we want to help you walk through is what do you need in your facility today, and also what do you need a few years down the road, right? When we talk about controllers, they're not just going to serve you for the first year, right? They are going to last several years. You want to start to think, can you grow and scale with that controller? And that's where we have products like the 2300 and 2400 that can grow and scale with your facilities. Quickly here on the 2250 series, right? There's three different ones we have in here. And the biggest value to this one is setup can be in 20 minutes or less. We have a great training session we've done before, and it should be up on our YouTube page here as well, that just walks through what that setup is and performance calibration. It walks you through all these processes, and for the most part, they're really simple and basic. And even the wiring is really easy to do. I was able to walk my 7-year-old through how to wire up to one of these controllers, obviously in a nice, safe way. He was then able to teach my 4-year-old how to do the same thing. So when you think about just the layer of simplicity that comes through with these controllers, it really makes it different, because it allows the end user to get up and running and stay up and running without having to learn complicated systems. And it just continues to work for years. And our feature-rich one is the 2300, as we talked about. Highlighting the main values here is simplified compliance reporting. We've talked about this before, but it really is an impactful thing that most facilities, especially in industrial applications and even in municipal applications, need to have really great records of what the water quality parameters are in their facility. And having a device be able to capture that for you, or be a redundancy capture for you as well, really helps simplify things across that facility. You can also get alarms and alerts that really help, right? So there's a great story I've told in the past, and I'll kind of give the cliff notes to it here. But long story short, a facility had a drop in pH. The operator got a alert on their phone saying, hey, something's wrong with it. It was in the middle of the night. It was an aquaculture facility, and they have millions of dollars worth of fish there. And that person was able to drive all the way in and make sure that everything was operating correctly. Now, it happened in that instance to be a rat had chewed through the cable and nothing was actually wrong with the pH, but it was important for them to be able to get there because, you know, a competitor of theirs not too long before had lost $3 million of fish in one day with one mistake. I mean, it's that layer of importance for these types of facilities that one mistake can really have a huge financial impact, and being able to get that information when you need is really good. And the last piece that's really impactful on the 2300 is no programming is needed, right? You don't need to know anything about coding or programming. You don't need a PLC expert. All you need to be able to do is follow the nice, simple instructions we have, and you'll be up and running, and you'll have all the features that you want at your fingertips. Bring it back home. Our instrumentation works when you need it to. And I can't say that enough because when you think about controllers, they are providing that control, right? It's in its name. It's so important that they are doing what they need to do. And that's something we really believe in across our whole range of instrumentation, from our transmitters all the way up to the really powerful 2400 with all the features that are included in with that. The goal of these continues to always be to work and continue to work for you. So I appreciate you guys, sticking through this part of the presentation so far. And we'll be wrapping up here with some Q&A. But if anyone does want to ever learn more, reach out to us. We have our information here between general quotes and orders, and our sales team and our support information, or you can always email or call me direct. We're here to help. And it's something we really stand behind. Of you call, you're going to get a human. We want you to be able to talk to us, and we want to be able to help you guys with all your water quality instrumentation needs. So that being said, I appreciate you guys sticking through this, and we'll go ahead and look through at the Q&A portion of this. So if you guys haven't posted any questions, then now's a great time to post that in as I try to get my mouse over there to look at the questions. All right, well, it seems like the Q&A section is just spinning on Teams. I don't know if it's just thinking. We'll give it just a few more seconds here. Otherwise, we can wrap up. Yeah, it doesn't even work. So that being said, our information is here. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'll go ahead and wrap up the session here. So I appreciate you guys attending. And for those of you that attended all three of our sessions in the Simplified Water Quality Instrumentation with Water Analytics, I really appreciate you guys taking through. If you haven't seen the other ones, they are on our YouTube channel. So please do check those out. And look forward to talking and meeting you guys at other times. So appreciate it all, and have a great rest of the day.